Good morning, and I do mean good morning. It is 3:15 a.m. in the morning, and I'm trying to get this out to you because I know that it might be of some help to you. Um, but we are so thankful to have had this privilege to teach this class. I'm just going to hit highlights. I'm going to try to hit everything that we would have hit in our last class, but I know you are in a hurry and it's late notice. So, but I want to say that it's been an honor to have done this. Talking about conflict resolution, and we're talking about recognizing and preventing conflict. The best medicine is preventative medicine. And so, if you want to head off conflict before it ever escalates, we need to recognize in the very beginning stages of it and as Barney Fife said, nip it, nip it, nip it in the bud. And here's some signs your church or ministry or business is headed for conflict. First of all, there'll be cliques. You've heard people say all the time, we don't need a church that has my four and no more. But truth of it is, there are a lot of churches that kind of work with that kind of a mentality. How do we recognize when cliques are present? First of all, you're going to see reduced productivity, because when there is conflict about to escalate or about to happen, it doesn't just happen in that moment. It has been incubating for a while, usually. So there are some comments that might be made, strange things that are out of character for somebody they didn't normally have that kind of attitude, but then they do. Their body language may tell you they may have like rolling of eyes when somebody says something, or just shrug things off when, or they have been outgoing but now they're not, or they were buddy buddies with somebody and now they are distancing themselves, or whatever. There's slower, more diminished lack of fellowship. People tend to go away or retreat back when they are about to blow a fuse, or sometimes they'll do the total opposite. But the first sign is of that. And then you'll notice people who was once faithful and very loyal to the church, often they begin to miss. My dad used to say, if you want to watch someone backslide, just watch, and you can tell it, you can predict it before it ever happens. Those people that are there every Sunday night and Wednesday, they're faithful. They are always there. They'll start slipping on Wednesdays. They're just hit and miss. And then pretty soon it's Sunday nights. And then it pushes into Sunday mornings. And before you know it, they're out the door. And that's a telltale sign also that there is conflict on the horizon sometimes. So we need to watch for signs that are developing in people, and try to stop things before it ever happens. Watch their body language. They typically avoid contact. They can't look you in the eye. They know, sometimes they know they're wrong, and they just they can't handle it. Their posture, their facial expressions. There are so many telltale signs sometimes. Watch how they behave. Watch how they'll start withdrawing from others when it's out of character for them to do so. Somebody that's been outgoing and then all of a sudden they're not. They often say, stay out of the discussion at hand. They become quiet, reserved when it's not normal. They're just not that outgoing, happy-go-lucky person. Now, that can be because of stress in some other area. It can be because of some kind of a relational problem going on. It can be because of a bad health report. But sometimes those things lead to acting out in other ways. So you'll find that people begin to complain, criticize constantly. Nothing is right, that so and so should have sung this, or why didn't they let me do this, or whatever. And then their skills for success and conflict resolution that we need to have before it starts. Like I said, an ounce prevention, a stitch in time, all of those old cliches that we've heard really and truly work right here in this. Active listening. Do not interrupt the other person. If you will allow someone to talk, if they want to just talk, let them talk. And sometimes they will deflate the problem on their own, just talking it out. Sometimes I think we just need to hear it out loud. And so talking and listening skills are very, very important. Listen to the facts and also listen to the feelings. Sometimes it doesn't have to be true, but if they feel a certain way, feelings are genuine, whether they're right or whether they're wrong. Focus on the comments that they make, not particularly in the way that the comment was delivered. They may say something, they may say it in a harsh way, but it may be a truth that we need to be listening to. So listen, not only, sometimes just forget the way it was delivered and just listen to the content, and be open-minded about it. Look at the other person, look at them in the eye, be open with them, and listen intently to what they have to say. You don't have to defend yourself if somebody is attacking you wrongly. Sometimes we think, well, we've got to be like the Supreme Court, giving our case. But you don't have to. Listen to understand instead of listening to respond. Sometimes we listen, then we want to just jump in there and do something. But if you listen for the facts, and if you listen, I remember some of the best advice I was ever given when we were singing in a quartet, and about how to put our songs together and this, that, and the other. It really hurt my feelings so bad, but it was the very best piece of advice that I've ever gotten. And so sometimes you just have to listen and say, well, is that really true about me? Can I do better? And yeah, usually we can. So learn to read the body language, but don't let it distract you. Don't get so busy watching that you don't listen. And an angry person is sometimes going to be very animate. They're going to be waving their arms. They're going to be punching that little forefinger at you. And they might have clenched fists and bulging veins and all of those things. But and they're going to avoid eye contact. But you need to maintain patience. And that is so much easier said than done. And you know what's hard to take is when someone says something to us and we are guilty. But sometimes you are just in a counseling session with somebody else. Remember, I just want to throw this in because it's such a good piece. I sat in the courtroom with a young man one time, and as they came out, the lawyer was speaking to the young man, and he had been accused of something that in his business that wasn't even halfway right. They just threw it out of court before it ever even got started. But the lawyers, the young man said, well, they're going to accuse me of something else. They're just going to make up something else. What do I do then? And his lawyer told him that there is, I forgot what it's called, but it's the law of first. The law of first. In other words, the first person they hear is the one, first of all, It may not be admissible in court, but if it's the first thing they hear, they heard it. And so the prosecuting attorney, first he says, so if that happens, you go immediately to the prosecuting attorney and tell him what happens. You be the first one there, don't be the second one. And so sometimes we need to maintain our patience. And if you're in a counseling session with someone, oftentimes as a youth director, assistant pastor, whatever, even a co-worker, a good friend, when they are telling you their story, remember that might be the first thing you hear, and you're automatically, if you heard the other person's side, you may see both sides, but you're going to have a lot of weight toward that first one, especially if they are your friend. So when you're in a session, I don't care how much you know this good saint, always remember there's two sides to every story. I tell people all the time, if we're lucky, there's only two sides to every story. Sometimes there's 3 or 4 or 5. And so, but just remember, what you hear is slanted from that person's perspective. I remember listening to a black preacher that I like to listen to from over in Virginia, West Virginia, I believe, but he just in passing said, you know, the great 4th of July and in the time of independence. And he said, of course, that wasn't our independence. The whole nation is going to be celebrating. And I had never in all my life, this was many years ago, but up until that time, I had never, ever looked from the other side. I never thought, you know, Abraham Lincoln had not done his job yet. He had not went down in history. And so, indeed, that was not their Independence Day. And so sometimes to see something from somebody else's perspective, both things are true, but it depends on which side you're looking at things. And so we need to always think about that. And I have lost my way on how to go forward with the next slides. Hang on just a second. Where did it go? There we go. So then we need to express an understanding for the person's frustration, maybe their position or the predicament that they are in. And that is something that we need to be aware of. Angry words are often a tool to get the other person's attention. So, what are the primary causes of anger? First of all, justification. We justify our anger by our opinion of something. Whether it's right or wrong, everybody has one. Identification. We take things personally. A lack of consideration. An angry person does not put themselves in the shoes of others. You know, there's the old saying about walk a mile in my shoes, but not everybody does that. And so if you're very angry, all you can see at the moment is why you're angry and you're in such a rage that you don't know. Blaming. We will blame other people. 99% of a person's anger is caused because they are blaming somebody else for their problem. Well, I wouldn't have been here if so-and-so hadn't blah, blah, blah. I wouldn't have done that to you if you hadn't said this to me. So forth and so on. Always somebody else's fault. So we need to learn to diffuse anger ahead of time. This whole thing is about preventative medicine. How can we do that? Well, first of all, we can do it by understanding the mechanics of anger. There are 3 kinds of anger. First of all, there is trigger anger. That's when certain events or people set a person off. And it could be the most innocent thing. It can be just um, a violent thing or a sweet thing. The same thing, or the same triggers, not the same triggers, but the same theory of trigger can trigger bad memories, but it can also, things like that can trigger anger as well. Uh, Things that trigger us can be so subtle. I was walking through the mall, and this has been about 20 years after my mom's passed, and I'm walking through the mall and I smell Estee Lauder, that aroma, and I just immediately turn. It triggered because that's what my mother wore. It just triggered really quickly that memory, that thought, that wow, she's just right here. But the same thing, the same way things like that can trigger us with memories, can trigger anger. Certain events, certain things, and it can even really be a smell. I know a young man who was molested when he was younger, and the place where he was molested was off in a barn kind of area. Family, nobody knew about what was going on, by an older cousin. So when he smelled certain colognes, certain outdoorsy smells, it would trigger those moments, those things, and nobody else would have any idea about what was going on. So we need to always be careful with people because we don't know what they're going through. Then we have displaced anger. That's when something happens and then you take it out on the person that's closest to you. This is known as kicking the dog syndrome. You kick the dog not because the dog did anything, but because you're angry about something else. Sometimes we come home and we take out things on our spouse or our children, not because they've done something to us, but because that hard day at work. And sometimes we'll even say, I'm sorry, I just had a hard day at work. Well, okay, so you did. But it can escalate into violence. Sometimes men come home, beat their wives, and sometimes wives can beat their men. But sometimes it's misplaced. We're doing it for the wrong reason. On April the 4th, 1968, Martin Luther King was killed. And when the news broke out, fires were set all over in Washington, D.C. They burned about 100 blocks, destroyed $27 million worth of property, killed 11 people, injured 1,100, and 6,000 people were incarcerated. This was in Washington, D.C. Did you know that the population of Washington, D.C. at that time was 70% African American? Their anger was misdirected. They burned down and destroyed their very own people, much like in Ferguson, Missouri. And then sometimes we have chronic anger. This is where anger is like swimming around in a toxic waste. It's just totally angry and in a rage all the time. You can't put your finger on exactly why, but you're just an angry person. I remember one time I was taking some kids to a school. It wasn't even my children, but I was taking them there. The mother was in the vehicle with me. I was taking them, and I think I had my blinker to go left when in reality I was going right. Well, I went right, but this person was angry, and I don't know why, because I didn't even go left, so I was not even going in their direction. I don't know what the problem was, but they honked, spit out around me, followed me, jumped out, said some very ugly things, and made some hand signs that were not very, very nice, uh, I would think that that person was in a rage of anger. I don't even know who they were. It always helps if you are aware of the person, or if you're if you are counseling with someone, if you'll know that individual's previous track record, if you kind of know what they've gone through, the history, um, and so forth. So I can remember being very upset and not angry, but very upset, aggravated, I guess is a good word, with a certain worship leader at our church. And I thought, this is just not going to cut it. And I don't understand why they're like this. But once I knew that person's background, the horrendous things they had gone through, it gave me much more understanding and more compassion. So being aware of what somebody's going through. Maybe they've had a previous church hurt. Maybe there was something that happened in their local school. Maybe at the workplace or in some social system. Listen to others. You'll hear somebody say, "I've been told by others." That's just that's a loose cannon ready to go, because what others said may have festered, or the others, just listen. There are certain phrases that you hear, and when you hear it, something's about to happen. Set the parameters beforehand, before it ever happens, how you're going to handle that angry person or the anger of somebody else. Some ways to address an anger problem is that we can learn to be agreeable. We can agree. The Bible says, agree with thine adversary quickly. Do it quickly. Don't let it escalate. We can agree to disagree. That is a truth. And learn to be agreeable. Two things can be true at one time. That's a truth too. My dad told me, never argue with a fool. He might be doing the same thing. I don't want to be the fool that they're arguing with. Accept others unconditionally. Be prepared to recognize that the problem that the person is talking about is probably not the real problem. And then just smile. That diffuses an anger attitude. Say thank you and yes very, very often. Express praise to the other person. It's virtually impossible to say high praise to someone and angry words at the same time. So it's, I remember one time I was just so upset with the youth director. This was when I was very young. I was the pianist. And they just seemed to have things, they just seemed to me to prolong things. And I would sit on the piano at the altar call until my back almost, it felt bad. So, and I was very young at the time. But it was just one of those things that I didn't appreciate how I didn't think they were in the right spirit. I just put it that way. And so one day I was down praying, and the Lord just spoke to me and said, Judy, if you will get in there and be their very best fan, their very best advocate, things are going to change. Now, I don't know if they changed or if it was my attitude that changed, but sometimes you just need to say nice things and not get in a tiz over things. Some people have a high temper, very high temper, and they'll say things like, it's just the Irish in me. Well, you want to say, no, it's the devil trying to get in you that's causing all that. Don't blame your heritage on something. And don't say, I just get grieved in my spirit. That just sounds so holy, doesn't it? When really, it's the devil that is, you could really be saying, I just get provoked by the devil. Some people say that person just pushes my buttons. Well, sometimes we push our own buttons, don't we? So blowing your top off does not make you a dynamic person. It might make a dynamic reaction, but it's not the thing. So when you're talking to somebody, a very important thing to do is to repeat back key phrases that they say, key ideas that they've said. So you're saying that blah, 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 blah. Because that's going to ensure that what they've said they actually mean. Or they might say, oh, no, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying blah, blah. So you don't want to take it wrong. Or it will ensure that you are indeed on the right page, the right path, and following along. So prepare to recognize that the problem that the person is talking about is probably not the real problem. When a husband and wife get in an argument, sometimes it's not anything between them. It's that they're stressed out over the budget and the money. Not wanting, tearing into your kids and saying, I told you to do da 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 da, may not have anything to do with whether they did or did not take the trash out or do a chore. It may have to do with you had a horrible incident at work. So sometimes what we react to is not the real problem. Very seldom do couples argue over the real problem. It's just a symptom of the real problem. Be prepared to be positive and solution conscious. Give hope that the problem can be resolved with God's help and our determination. Phrases that we probably should not use when we're trying to resolve issues. Don't say, well, you should have, you must, you just got to, you better. It's better to ask a question. Will you please try this? Or will you please do such and such? And don't use words like you. That automatically makes people go on the opposite side. Use statements like I understand what you're talking about. I totally get it. Never say I can't or I won't. Refrain from using words like you never blah blah blah. Well, you always. That's just trigger words that are just sitting there waiting to make bad emotions, and they're seldom accurate. Sometimes conflict comes simply because of personality differences. So you get a really two really opinionated firstborns and leaders going at it, and there's probably going to be a conflict somewhere along the way. So a person should always focus on themselves and ask, what action am I taking that contributes to this conflict? What am I doing to trigger something? The more intensive the dispute is, the more you're going to need to control your tongue, determine that this is your course of action before talking to somebody. Don't respond with harsh words. A soft answer turns away wrath. We have so many biblical stories. When personality differences are causing conflict, it is best to punctuate the positive about the other person. Upplay the positive, downplay the negative, always. Put yourself in the other person's shoes. See if you can see things from their perspective. That's probably one of the things that we need to do the most. Well, look at them. They're just driving so fast. Well, maybe they have a sick person. Maybe they have somebody having a heart attack in the back seat. They're trying to get to the hospital. look for the positive. Don't, not that it's positive that they're having bad health, but the positive that they had a good reason. So finally, when it seems that the conflict or the problem is not becoming resolved, determine to disagree agreeably. We can agree to disagree. And this means showing respect and kindness to the other person. We can get along. My brother-in-law just received a kidney from his brother. Now, my brother-in-law is a Pentecostal Church of God pastor in Des Arc, Arkansas. His brother is a Methodist pastor in Alma, Arkansas. Two different doctrines, but they get along just beautifully. There are always more things that we can get along with than not. The brother just quietly went and got checked out to see if he could be a donor. Very quietly said, "Yep, I'll give it to you." You didn't have to do that. You could have said, "Well, you don't believe the way I do, blah, blah, blah." They could have knocked down dragouts, probably if they wanted to, at family reunions, but they don't. Why? Because they're kind to each other. They agree more. There are more things they agree on than what they disagree on. So there are some lifelong lessons that sometimes we learn. Never say anything about anybody that you would not want to say to their face. Because let me tell you something that I've learned recently. There is a camera everywhere, and you would be totally shocked at how many people are recording every conversation all the time. When someone calls, their phones automatically records every conversation. I don't know why, but they do. Sometimes it comes in handy. There's cameras on doorbells. And if there's not some technology recording something, there is somebody with a wagging tongue real close by. I tell my people in leadership at our church, when you go to a restaurant, if you're at the Golden Corral, Western Sizzlin, Chuy's, wherever you are, do not talk loud about different things, because you never know when the person right behind you in the next booth knows the people you're talking about. Or if you're talking and they know what church you go to, that might be the nail in the coffin that says, "I won't go to that church." So don't say anything that you wouldn't say to somebody's face, because somebody is going to take it to their face. You can never unsay something that you've said. You can never unsay something that you have said. My daddy used to say, words are like bullets. Once they come out, you can't catch them and get them back. They're out there. It's a done deal. You can never unsay what you said. You can apologize, but it's out there. You can say, I was mistaken. I didn't have all my facts, but it's already out there. There's a story about a pastor that was seen at the train depot. This was way back in the day, picking up a young, lovely lady, pretty redhead, was hugging on her, and then they were seen at a little dining area. Tongues went to wagging. That Sunday morning, when they got to church, that redhead woman was sitting on the front pew, right by the pastor's wife. And people were talking. And the pastor had gotten wind of it. And he said, sometimes people jump to conclusions. And he introduced his sister who had come into town for a visit. But he explained the damage that they had done with their wagging tongues was like the pillow of feathers. If you open the pillow up and the feathers go flying through the air, you'll never be able to get every single last one of them up. So we need to be careful, because what you say can never be unsaid. Always search to have a win-win solution. People get irritated and angry when they feel like they've got the short end of the stick. People have gotten angry in church over so many silly things. They've gotten angry over pictures that have been hung in the church, and then they want to take them down, paint the walls a different color, whatever. And people get upset because great-great-grandma put that picture there. Well, you can tell, because if you take it down, the paint's totally different color under the picture than it is on the rest of the walls. It's been there that long. So many things that people get angry about. We need to try to find a win-win solution where both parties come out feeling good. And it can be done. So look in the windshield more than you do the rearview mirror. Conflict cannot be resolved talking about the past. Well, you shouldn't have this, you shouldn't have that. Okay, that's over with, that's done, and I'm sure it hurt. What can we do now, though, to go forward? We sure can't go forward by continuously hanging on to the past. Conflict cannot be resolved unless both parties determine to move to the future and leave the past behind. I hope that you have really enjoyed this book and the class. I really hope that we have done it at least a little justice, and perhaps the next time I teach it, we'll be so much more prepared than we are just like, okay, here. But you're going to do well on your semester test. Just study those review sheets. It's not going to be difficult. The difficult part will be going through life without any conflict. The blessed part will be if you will be the peacemaker. Blessed are the peacemakers. Heavenly Father, I thank you today for the opportunity to have had these students. Father, I ask that you would help us to be a bright light in a dark world. Help us to bring peace and softness, kindness to those around us. We give you praise, glory, and honor in Christ's name. Amen.